never told anyone this story before, not like this. Even now, months later, I can't stop thinking about what happened at my aunt's apartment. Sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I swear I can still hear it. The knocking. And every time I remember that summer, I wonder if we really left it behind, or if it's still with us. It started when my aunt called me in June. Her husband, my uncle, travels constantly for business, and she said the apartment felt too quiet, too lonely. Since I had my summer break, she asked if I could come spend a couple of weeks with her and my little cousin Noah, who was 4. I said yes immediately. When I got there, everything felt normal. The apartment complex was in a quieter, somewhat isolated part of town. Lots of dim streetlights, lots of silence at night. Noah was adorable, endlessly energetic, and we spent hours playing together. Most of the time, though, I sat around scrolling on my phone while my aunt cooked or watched TV. The first couple of days went smoothly, perfectly actually, but things changed after that. One afternoon, we decided to go buy some groceries. My aunt's car wouldn't start, and since she said the pantry was nearly empty, we decided to walk to a nearby store about 2.5 miles away. It was early evening, the sun already slipping behind the horizon, and the streets were oddly quiet. A few of the streetlights along the way were out, leaving long, dark gaps between glowing circles of orange light. Noah walked between us, holding both our hands. Halfway there, I noticed he kept glancing over his shoulder. At first, I ignored it, but after the 3rd or 4th time, I leaned down and whispered, "Hey buddy, what are you looking at?" He turned his little face toward me, eyes wide and innocent, and said in his small, cheerful voice, "Someone's standing back there and waving at me." I froze. My aunt, who didn't catch it, asked, "What did he say?" I repeated it to her. She immediately stopped and turned around, scanning the empty, dimly lit street. There was nothing there. I forced a laugh. "It's probably his imagination," I said. But my stomach felt cold. We kept walking. Noah never mentioned it again, but he didn't let go of my hand the entire way back. The next night, at exactly 10 p.m., we heard it for the first time. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, deliberate. My aunt froze, then walked toward the door cautiously. I followed behind her. When she opened it, there was no one there. The hallway outside was empty and silent. We both laughed nervously, assuming it was some neighbor's kid messing around. But the next night, at the exact same time, it happened again. 3 knocks. This time, she didn't open the door. And that's when she told me something I didn't know. She'd been hearing faint knocks like this for weeks before I arrived. She thought she was imagining it, especially because my uncle always dismissed her fears. I wanted to believe it was nothing, but I couldn't ignore the timing. 10 p.m. every night. 3 nights later, everything escalated. I woke to my aunt's scream. I ran to her room and found her sitting up in bed, trembling, pointing at the corner. Someone was standing there, she whispered. We turned on every light in the room, searched the entire apartment. Nothing. The windows were locked, the doors bolted. But the air felt wrong. Heavy. That was the first time she called my uncle and begged him to come home. He brushed it off, saying she scares too easily, and promised to come back in 2 weeks. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did she. 2 nights later, around noon, I was sitting on the floor with Noah, helping him stack blocks. He suddenly stopped, turned his head slowly, and pointed at the far corner of the living room. "What is it?" I asked softly. He didn't answer. He just smiled, then giggled, and went back to playing with his toys. That was the moment my stomach dropped, because Noah wasn't just pointing at any corner. He was pointing at the exact same spot my aunt had seen someone standing. From that night on, the knocks became different. It wasn't just 3 anymore. It would start slow, then get faster, louder, until it sounded like someone was slamming both fists into the door. One night, I decided to wait right by the door at 10 p.m. The second the first knock hit, I yanked it open. Nothing. The hallway was dead silent, but the lights were flickering violently, and somewhere down the corridor, I swear I heard footsteps running away. 2 evenings later, I was lying on the couch reading when something happened that still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. Out of nowhere, the book I was holding flew out of my hands. Not dropped, flew, hard enough to smash against the far wall. I screamed and bolted out of the room. My aunt ran out, asking what happened, and when I told her, she grabbed my arm and whispered, "We're sleeping in my room tonight, with the lights on." That night, the knocks came again. Louder, longer, more furious, and for the first time, we heard breathing outside the door. My uncle finally came home 2 days later. He thought we were overreacting. Until that night, he was in the guest room on a video call while my aunt, Noah, and I were sitting on the floor playing with his toy cars. Noah threw one of the toys toward the corner of the room and went to fetch it. And then he lifted off the ground. I swear to God, he was floating 4 feet in the air. My aunt and I froze. She screamed his name. Noah wasn't scared. He was smiling, giggling, like someone invisible was holding him, playing with him. I rushed forward, but stopped dead when I saw his tiny legs kicking in midair like he was dangling from unseen hands. My uncle ran in and grabbed him, pulling with all his strength. But Noah's body wouldn't move, like something had him pinned there. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. He dropped into my uncle's arms, completely unharmed. That was it. We just grabbed what we could carry and left the apartment that night. My aunt and uncle moved into a new place across the city. I went back home. A month later, I called my aunt to check in. She said nothing strange had happened since the move, but then she hesitated, and in a low voice she said, "Sometimes Noah still points at the corners." So, this is something I've never really talked about before. Even now, more than 20 years later, it still sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it. I was around 7 years old when it happened, but the memory is so vivid that I can still picture every detail from that night. It was summer, and I remember because my mom had left the window slightly open in my bedroom to let some air in. My bedroom was at the very end of the hallway, and my door faced the living room. I used to keep the door slightly cracked because, as a kid, I hated complete darkness. I needed to see at least a sliver of light from the hallway. That night, I went to bed like usual. Nothing strange, nothing unusual. But around 2 a.m., I woke up, and the first thing I noticed was that everything was too quiet. It wasn't the normal kind of nighttime quiet, where you can hear crickets or the distant hum of cars. This was a heavy silence. like the entire world had stopped moving. And that's when I realized my bedroom door was open wider than I had left it. At first, I thought maybe my mom had checked on me and just forgot to close it back. So I sat up a little and looked. That's when I saw it. A hand, slowly reaching inside my room from behind the door. I froze. It wasn't my mom's hand. It wasn't my dad's. This thing, it didn't even look human. It was long and bony. But what terrified me the most was the hair. The entire hand and arm were covered in these thick, coarse black hairs. They were so dark, they almost looked wet, like matted animal fur. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared. The second my eyes landed on it, the hand stopped moving. Completely. It was like whatever. It belonged to somehow knew I had seen it. I remember pulling my blanket up slowly, covering everything but one eye so I could still peek. My little heart was pounding so hard, I thought the thing could hear it. I expected it to pull away or crawl further into the room, but it didn't. It just stayed there. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 20. I don't know how long I sat there, barely breathing, but when I glanced at the clock, it was almost 3 a.m., and the hand was still there, perfectly still. The silence in the house was unbearable. The only thing I could hear was my own shaky breathing inside the blanket. I remember squeezing my eyes shut, trying to convince myself it was just a dream. But every time I peeked again, the hand was there. The strangest thing was, I couldn't see anything else. No face, no body, no eyes peeking through the door. Just that hairy, motionless hand, frozen in place like it was waiting for me to make a move. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled the blanket completely over my head, curled up as small as I could, and prayed. I whispered to myself over and over, "Please go away, please go away," until eventually I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, the sun was shining through my window. The door was still slightly open, exactly how I usually left it. I checked the hallway, the living room, everything. There was no sign of anyone, nothing out of place. I told my mum about it later that day, but she just laughed and said I must have been dreaming. But I know what I saw, and I never saw that hand again.